Hi, this is a video recipe on how to make homemade sauerkraut. The ingredients for it are very simple. You need pickling salt or canning salt or kosher salt. It's salt without iodine. And then the rest is just good fresh cabbage. The tools you need to make it are a tablespoon for measure, a good sharp knife, a large container that will not react to the salt, like this stainless steel bowl, and it needs to hold about 1.5 heads of cabbage. After it has set and drained for a few hours, then you're going to store it in a 1-gallon glass jar that uses a Ziploc plastic bag for its seal. To prepare the cabbage, take out some of the softer outer leaves, and you can save those later to chop up and use in soups and stews, things like that. Then you need to quarter the cabbage with your good sharp knife. Each quarter half cut again, so you have it in quarters, and then you can take the core out. Good for the garden. Save it and put it in there. Then very carefully with that sharp knife, slice the cabbage quarter thinly. After you get a few slices done, chop that into smaller pieces and start filling your bowl. You'll find that you can rotate that quarter as you work it down. It's easier to slice it. Just make it as thin as you can, about 1/8 of an inch thick. Various sizes do not hurt. It just makes the sauerkraut more interesting because you know it's homemade and not some mechanical process. After each quarter is in the bowl, you're going to need to sprinkle 1 tablespoon of that kosher pickling salt on it. What the salt does is draws the moisture out, and you want all that moisture. We're not going to get rid of it, but it makes the cabbage go limp, and then you'll be able to put it into the jar. 1 tablespoon per quarter out of cabbage. Sprinkle it all over. And we're going to continue to layer until we have this bowl full. That'll be about 1.5 heads of cabbage. Okay, there's the last of my 1.5 heads of cabbage, all smoothly in that bowl. You can see the bowl is almost full. 1 more tablespoon of salt, which will make that 6 tablespoons of salt for 1.5 heads of cabbage. That's 1 tablespoon per quarter head of cabbage. Again, we sprinkle it all over. And now we're going to stir this all together to incorporate that salt all through the cabbage. What we're trying to get it to do is to release all its water. So it's going to sit now for 4 to 5 hours until the cabbage itself becomes limp. Then we will put it in a jar, gallon jar. This should fill the gallon jar 3/4 full, tightly packed. You need to leave space at the top for your Ziploc bag that makes the airtight seal. And we'll talk about that in another episode of this video after this is set for 4 or 5 hours. That's it. Thanks. Okay, it's been about 4 hours now, and you can see the cabbage is wilted down to about half its volume, and we've collected all the juice in the bottom. Now it's time to start filling our jar. We have a clean gallon glass jar, and we're just going to use our hands and start packing it in. Some might think this is messy, some might think it's fun. I think it's fun. But what you want to do is get a large amount of it in the jar and then push it to the bottom. And actually use your fist to squeeze it down, because we want to get all of this in to this one jar, still leaving about a quarter of the top open so that we can put in our airlock with a Ziploc bag. Okay, we've just got all of the cabbage in there, and now we're going to pour in all of the juice that was there, that was released from the cabbage by the salt. Scrape the bowl clean. This cabbage was nice and fresh and wilted down very well. We don't quite have 3/4 of a gallon filled, but we're well over half full. And we want to make sure we leave room for the airlock anyway. So you can see here now, as I push this down, that there's plenty enough juice. We don't need to add any water. If your cabbage is very, very fresh, it'll be very juicy, and you won't have to add any water. Remember, this is the brine. You don't want to add water if you can help it. The next step then is the airlock. For that you need a Ziploc bag, and I really recommend that you put some water in it to begin with to make sure that even though it's a new clean bag, that it doesn't leak. And this one here seems to be pretty good. So then you set the bag down into the jar. Use your hands to spread it all around so it covers the surface of the cabbage. And then we're going to continue filling it with water to press the sides of the bag against the jar. This will give us an airlock. You want to place the jar someplace warm. Your kitchen is fine if you don't mind the smell that's going to come out as it starts to ferment, because it's really fun to watch it as it goes from this beautiful whitish green color to the yellow color of sauerkraut. I also highly recommend that you put it on or in a sauce dish, because sometimes, depending on how full you have this, when it starts to ferment, the gases and liquid will come up the sides and run over. But I don't think we'll have that problem with this one. It's not that full. After a couple of weeks, it's going to start to look like this one, where you can see it's turned a beautiful, lovely gold color and looking more like sauerkraut. I also recommend that you put a tag on it like this of the day you put it into the jar, because you need to let it ferment for about 6 weeks, and that way you'll know when it's ready. After it's done fermenting, you can take the top out, the water out, put a jar on top on it, and put it in the refrigerator, and it will last for another 6 weeks then. When you go to use it, you want to rinse the sauerkraut. Try to get some of the excess salt out of it, so it's a reverse osmosis. And then you can either eat it fresh or fried with brats. Fantastic Reuben sandwiches. You're going to fall in love with it. Good luck.